Hi everybody. In this video, we are going to practice determining the amounts of gross wages that are subject to FICA Social Security tax, FICA Medicare tax, FUTA tax, and California SUTA tax. To be successful in this video, you need to remember several things. The FUTA and California SUTA wage base has been set at $7,000 for many years. Accordingly, FUTA and SUTA tax must be paid on the first $7,000 of gross wages paid to each employee during the calendar year. Each employee's gross wages in excess of $7,000 are exempt from FUTA and SUTA tax for the rest of the calendar year. The FICA wage base usually changes each year. For 2018, the Social Security wage base is $128,400. Therefore, for 2018, FICA Social Security tax must be paid on the first $128,400 gross wages paid to each employee during the calendar year, and each employee's gross wages in excess of $128,400 are exempt from Social Security tax for the rest of the calendar year. FICA Medicare tax must be paid on all gross wages paid to each employee without limitation. Look at the information presented on the spreadsheet. As you can see, there are 13 employees, and the year-to-date gross wage through October 31st, 2018, and wages to be paid for the month of November 2018 are listed next to each employee's name. We need to calculate the November gross wage that are subject to FICA Social Security tax, FICA Medicare tax, and FUTA-SUTA tax. You should assume that all taxes have been paid on the gross wages that were paid to each employee prior to November 1st. Let's start with Kathleen. From January through October 31st, 2018, Kathleen had been paid $126,700. In the month of November, her gross wage will be $7,000. All taxes have been properly paid on $126,700 for Kathleen, so it is clear that she has exceeded the $7,000 FUTA-SUTA wage base at some time prior to November 1st. Accordingly, FUTA and SUTA taxes have already been fully paid for Kathleen, and her current gross wage is exempt from FUTA-SUTA tax. Therefore, 0 should be entered into the FUTA-SUTA column. There is no limit on the wages on which FICA Medicare tax must be paid, so all $7,000 of Kathleen's gross wage for the month of November is subject to FICA Medicare tax. Therefore, $7,000 should be entered in the FICA Medicare column. For 2018, FICA Social Security tax must be paid on the first $128,400 of gross wages for each employee during the calendar year. Let's do a calculation. $128,400 maximum amount on which the tax is charged minus $126,700 on which tax has already been paid equals $1,700 of wages still subject to Social Security tax. Therefore, only $1,700 of Kathleen's November wages is subject to Social Security tax. The rest of her wages are exempt from FICA Social Security tax for the rest of the calendar year. For Anthony, gross wages paid to Anthony before November were only $6,800. He did not exceed the FUTA-SUTA wage base in prior months. Accordingly, some of his November wages are subject to FUTA-SUTA tax. To calculate how much, subtract the prior wages from the maximum amount of wages on which the tax is paid, $7,000 maximum wages on which FUTA-SUTA tax is paid, minus $6,800 of wages on which tax has already been paid, equals $200 of wages still subject to FUTA-SUTA tax. So $200 of Anthony's November wages are subject to FUTA and SUTA tax. All of $500 of Anthony's November wages are subject to FICA Medicare tax because there is no limit on wages on which this tax is applied. And all 500 of his November wages are also subject to FICA Social Security tax because he hasn't even come close to the $128,400 wage base. So $500 should be entered in his FICA Social Security wages column. Let's do Carlos next. Clearly, none of his November wages are subject to FUTA and SUTA tax because prior to November, his wages were well in excess of the $7,000 wage base. And all of his $2,500 of wages are subject to FICA Medicare tax, as there is no limit on the wages on which this tax is charged. His annual gross wages subject to FICA Social Security tax until they reached $128,400. He was paid $122,700 gross wages before November. Remember that all tax has already been paid on the $122,700. So $128,400 maximum minus $122,700 wages on which tax has been paid equals $5,700 of wages still subject to Social Security tax during 2018. But be very careful here. Tax should not be paid on more than his gross wage for the month. Carlos' gross wage for the month is only $2,500. So the full $2,500 of November wages are subject to FICA Social Security tax for Carlos. Please take a few minutes to calculate the Social Security wages, the Medicare wages, and the FUTA-SUTA wages for the rest of the employees. I'll be back in a few minutes to give you the answers so you can see if your solutions are correct. Okay, we're back. You may not have been able to finish all of the employees, so go ahead and pause your recording, and when you finish, click back on. In the meantime, I'm going to start showing the solution, and here it is. The only truly tricky ones were Carlos and Ahmed, which was the same situation. All of Ahmed's and all of Carlos's wages are subject to FICA Social Security tax because even though they're getting close, they had not exceeded the 128,400 wage base. In the month of November. So I'm going to be quiet and just let you check the numbers for the rest of the recording. Okay, so be sure to send me an email if you have any questions about these answers here. And also, remember that you can play this video again to get some more time to do the calculations. I'll see you next time. Thanks.